Since 2009, working with thousands of grievers, we've noticed some myths that people kind of battle in their grief journey, myths that can keep us stuck longer in the pit of grief that we need to be. One of the greatest myths that we experienced is this myth that there's something wrong with me. If I was a stronger Christian, if I was a stronger God person, if I had more self-will, like self-discipline, if I just did this, I wouldn't feel so bad. And our efforts to deal with this myth of what is wrong with me, sometimes we try to short circuit the grief journey. One thing we teach in our grief retreats and our grief online course and our coaches teach is the fact that I have to go to the pit of grief when I experience loss. You can't ignore that. And sometimes the people we work with have some kind of faith from many different religious backgrounds that we work with. Sometimes people have no faith. Sometimes they have great faith in their God. And they have been taught that if they just had a stronger faith, they wouldn't feel so bad. Of course, that's not true, but it's what we think is true. Now, lament in Scripture is very real. This isn't about lament. We're going to do a separate video on the power of lament because it gives us permission to feel bad and still have a great faith. But that's not the purpose of this video today. The purpose of this video is to shatter one of the myths that we see hinder people's grief journey all the time. And that myth is fueled by a classic mistake that most of us make. And that classic mistake is comparing my losses and my grief journey to other people. For example, somebody experiences a loss, and they go to a support group, or they even come to a Spark of Life retreat, and they hear stories of other people's losses. And those, I think of one retreat we had a few years ago, where one of the first people to share on Thursday night at our retreats was that they were there because they had lost 3 children within a 5-year period, all unrelated to each other. They lost 3 children. We have a couple that works with us that also lost 3 children. One of the initial responses we have can very easily be, what am I doing here? Why am I watching this video? There are other people who have terrible, horrific losses, more so than me. We had a woman who on the same day she found out about her son's death, her husband came in and said, I don't love you anymore. He didn't know about the son's death, and I'm going to leave you, and I've fallen in love with another woman. And within a 30-minute period, she got the news of losing her son and losing her marriage. And she got that news in one 30-minute period or something like that. And the other people there are saying, oh my goodness, that's not me. My loss is bad, but it's not that bad, right? And so what that tends to do when I compare losses, one of 2 things will happen. I will either I'll have the tendency to either minimize my feelings of despair and hopelessness, or I might maximize my feelings. If I compare myself to somebody else's loss and I wouldn't trade places with them, then I might say to myself, I will say, well, what am I doing complaining about my loss? I haven't experienced what these other people have experienced. Maybe you've experienced that. And there's some subtle teaching out there that sometimes it's pretty overt that I don't have a right to feel bad because others have worse loss than me. I remember one of our children one day coming home from school. They were in the 5th. They were 5 years old. I mean, this son of ours was 5, and he was very sad. And I said, "Hey, buddy, what's wrong?" He said, "Well, my girlfriend broke up with me today." And he was in kindergarten, and of course, I didn't know he was dating this girl. He had never asked for keys for the car to go out on a date and things like that. It kind of took Debbie and me by surprise. But he was very sad. And wonder if we would have told him this. We didn't do this, I don't think. That well, buddy, you should be thankful you can run and play. Your friend Timothy is in a wheelchair, and he'll never be able to run and play outside like you can. And so maybe we say those things, and we've learned this growing up, that there's always somebody with worse loss than we are that we are experiencing, and I shouldn't feel so bad. And so we hear people say all the time, you just need to be thankful and grateful. In our grief recovery work, we think being grateful is one of the key tenets of a healthy recovery, but we don't start with that. we start with give yourself permission to feel like crap. Your feelings are real. And so the problem with comparing my loss to your loss or to other people's loss, if their loss is what I consider greater than mine, then I might tend to minimize my feelings. And that could really hurt my recovery because I am trying not to feel so bad. And it sounds so crazy, doesn't it? We're telling you to go ahead and go to the pit of grief. Because you see, grief is natural and normal. Grief is something that I've got to go through. And any attempt to short circuit my grief journey will result in an unhealthy recovery. It could result in that because there's still that stuff in there. And somebody says, why is it wrong to minimize my feelings of despair and hopelessness? Well, because if that's what I feel, that's what I feel. I don't decide to feel something. When feelings come on like that, I need to give myself permission to cry, to vent, to yell, to share those feelings with somebody I can trust who doesn't try to fix me. But the problem with minimizing my feelings of despair and hopelessness is because they're real feelings sometimes. I don't want to minimize my feelings. And so when I compare my loss to somebody who has greater loss than me, and people do have greater loss than me, my grief is my grief, and my loss is my loss, and it's okay to grieve. And any attempt to hold off the waves of grief usually results later into more problems, and I stay stuck in the pit of grief than making progress in my grief journey. So we don't want to compare losses because it can minimize my feelings. And the other thing is we don't want to compare losses because it might maximize my feelings. So somebody has a loss that I don't consider very deep, but I don't know their story, right? And they're in grief, and I hear their loss story, and I think, well, they don't have a right to even feel bad. I have a right to feel bad. And so my feelings can be intensified like I've got one of the worst losses in the history of the world. Now, that's a tough place to be in too, because what can happen is if I maximize my feelings of despair, I give up sometimes. I know you haven't given up because you're watching this video, but you might have a friend who needs this video, right? But I can't give up. And if I think my loss is the worst in the world or one of the worst, and that you can never have a healthy recovery from this loss, and I can never be happy again because my loss is so deep and bad, then what I do is sabotage my own recovery and end up missing out on some joy and happiness and purpose in life down the road. Right now, I can't imagine it. It's okay not to imagine it right now, but I want to at least put that thought in your mind. And there's the third result of us comparing losses. We can balance ourselves. We don't want to maximize our feelings of despair and hopelessness. We don't want to minimize them. We want to be real. It's okay for me to feel hopeless and helpless sometimes. You watching this video is evidence that you have not given up. Give up is a feeling. It can be a feeling that we never act on. Many times I wanted to quit Spark of Life. Even this week, Debbie and I talked about it. We said, this is so hard. Feelings of giving up are okay. Giving up is not okay. You say, well, that doesn't make any sense because I think I've given up. No, you haven't given up. You're still breathing and you're still here and you're still alive and you're watching this video. That's good. That's not bad. And so that third response to comparing loss is, number one, try not to compare. Stop it before it happens. So if somebody has a greater loss than you or somebody has a lesser loss than you, give them the benefit of the doubt. Let them have their grief, but you let yourself have your grief. It's okay because some people do have greater losses and some people do have lesser losses. But that really doesn't matter. Not comparing losses is really the best path. And that's because at the heart of not comparing losses is you taking ownership of your grief and of your recovery. Take ownership of your recovery. So we don't compare losses. It's a great myth that there is something inherently wrong with me that I can never be happy again and feel like I'm hopeless and helpless and I'm stuck in this mire of grief forever. No, we can't take away your pain. And you can't deny the losses, but you can certainly destroy the myth that you will always feel hopeless and helpless as you feel today. We're here to walk beside you, a spark of life. Click on that link below. I mean, all the stuff about liking our videos, all that stuff. Great. Do that, subscribe. But click the link on sparkoflife.org to find out how we can help you, how you can discover the power within yourself to take charge of your recovery and live forward with hope, joy, and purpose again with the pain of your loss. At Spark of Life, we believe there's always, always hope. Go to sparkoflife.org for more information.